as the case is over, there's no more evidence to be gathered. There's only my hope that you'll be able to see past this delusion.
You have to be willing to see.
I wish it were that simple.
Scully, you have to believe me. Nobody else on this whole damn planet does or ever will. You're my 1 in 5 billion.
Hello and welcome to Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast. I'm Chex, joined by Luke, to talk a little bit about X-Files today. How are you doing, Luke?
I'm doing good, and a little bit of a surprise because I didn't bring this up in the pre-build-up talk that we had. Happy third anniversary to Most Unwanted.
Is it the third anniversary?
Yeah,
God, yeah.
I mean,
you did send me a message, actually.
It's the time, I mean, by the date of recording, which is if this will date it for everyone, but the 25th of the 3rd, it would be our third year of doing this, or our third anniversary anyway, because we started in 2018.
Happy anniversary. That has flown by.
I know, yeah. Did you expect to be covering it in a global pandemic?
Yes, yeah. I thought when we first started it, I can't wait for the third season, the pandemic season. Yeah. It's going to be great.
Yeah, when we can't speak to each other, see each other.
I still remember queuing up in line for rides in Disneyland Paris, thinking about names for the podcast.
Yeah.
to pass the time.
Because initially we were going to call it like the Chex Files, weren't we? which is quite the yeah. I mean, it's good that I suggested that one because man, it would be a masturbatory name else.
I might do an extra. Maybe I should do an extra 10-minute podcast after we release it as an extra one. So you know how The Walking Dead had the Talking Dead.
Yeah.
So I'll release a 10-minute podcast called the Chex Files, and it's talking about this episode of Most Unwanted. Really better.
I thought Luke in this part made some it's really outlandish claims, to be honest.
I'll have you on as guest every now and then.
Yeah, and I go, I don't know what I was thinking.
I'd love to review some of our episodes. That'd be great. Definitely not the first 5.
Do you know why? Yeah, definitely not. I every time I see somebody tweet us saying, "Oh, I'll have to listen to this and check it out," I'm like, not the first episode. They're gonna don't start from there. Just start from there. Get an idea of the quality, what we get to, and sort of just, I don't know, work your way through if you're brave.
Hey, I mean, I don't know. The first episode might be alright for some people. It's certainly not what the show is now. No. I think, but at the end of the day, I think some people like facts and just getting straight to it.
Yeah.
Whereas we're just, I feel like the looser format that we have now is just more our style.
Yeah. It definitely feels more natural now. Speaking of natural, we need a segue.
How about I give you a few questions?
Questions with the boys. Questions with the boys. After the chasing sunset, one of life's simple joys. Questions with the boys.
So Luke, to keep in sort of keeping with this episode, if you could be any bug or rodent, what would you be?
Bug or rodent? Why those two?
Well, I mean, it's about a bug man, but I feel like bug isn't enough choice.
Okay.
Just the sort of the pests. That's what I'm thinking. If you could be any pest, what would you be?
See, if I think bug-wise, I mean, I don't know. It's not an insect technically, but something I don't know, like a spider or a scorpion. Some hard
I'd put
bug.
that in the same category.
Do you know what I mean? A bug that no one's going to mess with. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of spiders that get killed in households all across the world.
There's a lot of insects around the world that get killed to be. Maybe a scorpion, then a desert scorpion, the deadly ones. Because they're going to get eaten by something. That's just the law of the nature. But if I want to be eaten, I'm going to go down fighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Is it cockroaches that are like will outlive like nuclear apocalypse and stuff like that?
Yeah. Because I
think
think
it's beetles or
it's
cockroaches.
Cockroaches. Yeah, I think it's something to do with that they don't absorb radiation or something like that.
See, that's an option, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like I'd still like to be like a rat or something like that, like something more mammal-like.
Yeah,
I don't think I could fully commit to the insects.
Yeah. At least, I feel like you can kind of imagine what being a rat would be like, but I can't imagine what. I don't even think they have a brain, do they? Like a scorpion.
I just honestly couldn't even picture what like being an insect is like.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it. But
I've seen Ratatouille. At least I know that's probably how a rat lives.
I'd love to like cook under someone's hat. That'd be amazing. That's what I want.
I'm sure we've raised Ratatouille before as
No, you're thinking of Stuart Little.
Stuart
Don't you dare bring Stuart Little back into this.
That's a deep cut from our early days.
Okay, a little bit more, not a serious question, but my second question to you is, if you could live in any US state, this episode's obviously set in between sort of Washington, D.C. and somewhere in Illinois, I can't remember where exactly, but if you could live, just go there, pick up your life, move, all your family and friends come with you, move to any state in the US, where would you go?
I think it would be California, just because it has my kind of vibe, just chilled out, you know what I mean?
I don't know. Well, again, I don't know much about California. Like I get the impression it's not as chilled out as you think.
Yeah, but it depends where you go in California as well. But let's say I get to pick where, but I'm going to hope that I can just be a beach bum basically.
You just want to chill out on the beach, watch the sunrise, sunset.
Yeah,
you still want to work. I'm not like giving you all the money in the world to work with.
I mean, yeah, I could still do my normal job, I guess. Just
on the beach.
On the beach, yeah. As long as I've got a generator, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll just take up surfing and I'll become I don't know, I would have a surf shop.
I like it.
I'm fully committed to this California lifestyle.
Or you could be a lifeguard.
Nah, it's too much.
You could wear the swimming trunks that Mulder wears.
That's too well. That would be good, but it's too much pressure. I have to save a life. Holy moly! No way.
I don't know. I reckon. Well, yeah. I don't want to downplay lifeguards' work here. I was gonna say I reckon 90% of their job is just stopping barbecues and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But
you've been watching too much.
And then I realised I am downplaying someone who saves lives. So maybe I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you're gonna be hated by Australia and lifeguard. That's the combo as well. There, Australian lifeguards. Wasn't
a revelation on Twitter this week that I love my new bio that we got a tweet this week that says Czechs hate Australia and love, and I think that sums me up perfectly.
Have you ever been to Australia or in love?
Well, I mean, I am married, so
that doesn't answer the question. Sorry, Jim.
As for Australia, no, why would I? No, I'm not going to double down on this.
Yeah, it's a weird hill to die on. Really weird.
It is. Okay, so for my state, I think I'd probably go really basic, and I'd probably go New York or Boston or something like that.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about this, I did realise that I don't really know much about the middle states.
Yeah, I think
it's mostly the coastal states I know about, and then the middle states all kind of blur into one. I don't really know that much about them.
They kind of had that reputation. You've heard the term flyover state, and so there's
I've not heard that term. What does that term mean?
Basically, again, I'm not disparaging anyone in America because I've only
sounds like you're about to. So
I've heard Americans say. I would never say that. I'm happy to go to any state if you pay me, but. There's this term flyover states where people I think it's people on the coast east or west coast will say there are a lot of states in the middle it's not worth bothering with and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So they're only there to fly over type.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that's just basically like from, I don't know what it is, because there are stuff set in like all over America. I don't know. I think they've just got like maybe like California, New York, and Boston, Florida. They've all got like this sort of like specific identity that you sort of relate to them. Whereas like some of the middle states, I don't really have like a clear picture of what they are, and so they kind of just merge into all together.
I think especially from the outside looking in as well, like I imagine like we know everything about, I don't know, Yorkshire, but I don't know too many like people from around the world who will be like, I know exactly what Leeds is like, you know.
Yeah, what I don't know about Yorkshire is not worth knowing.
Yeah, exactly. We're Yorkshire experts. Love their puddings, tell you what.
Yeah, test me. Anyone out there from Yorkshire, test us. And we'll show you. We'll show you what we can do. So now that we've isolated Australia and Yorkshire, should we talk about the X-Files?
Maybe. If anyone's still listening.
This week we're going to look at episode 19, season 5 of the X-Files, titled Folie à Deux. Directed by Kim Manners, written by Vince Gilligan, and it originally aired on May 10th, 1998. Now, before we get into it, that date is quite important because this is quite a long time ago. Looking back on this episode now, I felt like it was important to maybe like not so much a trigger warning as such, but I wanted to put it out right up at the front of the episode that this episode contained a few problematic scenes, I thought. I don't know about you. With regards to, like, potential, like, hostage situations, like, potential mass shootings with, like, assault rifles and stuff like that. And there's a lot in this episode, especially with recent events over the last couple of weeks, that I just thought it was going to be a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, so I wanted to address it right on the top. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's better to just get it out of the way before we start and get into that, and it sort of rears its ugly head, unfortunately. But yeah, it's one of those things that where, like, obviously those things happened in 1998, so it's not a new thing, but it just feels like the tone that it sort of sets for that kind of thing in this episode feels like they wouldn't make an episode like this nowadays. You know what I mean? It feels...
especially when, like, especially over the last couple of weeks, a lot's been made of, like, making excuses for people that commit these crimes, or, like, almost sort of normalising it by giving them law enforcement giving them a reason, or, like, reasoning away why they've done what they've done.
Yeah.
And watching this, it felt awkward. I didn't want to come on and sort of go, oh, there's a reason why this guy in this episode did this, even though it's a sci-fi show and it's a massive cockroach, which sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, like, I didn't want to add to, like, the voices of going, oh, yeah, this is perfectly fine, or, like, making him a sympathetic character, even though it's not really relatable. It just felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think what we're probably going to do is just talk about the episode as is and just sort of go through it. But I did want to make it known that the similarities are there.
Yeah.
People can see the similarities, and they are in our heads as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's anything from the past, like, that touches on stuff, you have no idea how it's going to change in 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this was written at the time where these things were, like, very different to what they are now. Still, obviously, terrible things that happen. But yeah, it was a less... I don't know what. I guess it was less raw as it is now, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know.
That's the thing. So hopefully we've sort of made it clear our sort of thoughts on that. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. We start off in Oak Brook, Illinois. We are introduced to Gary Lambert, who is kind of one of the main characters of this episode. And he's at a company called Vinyl Light, and he's basically just a telemarketer. He's got a script, and he's just running through that script, and he's it looks like a brain dead job, if you know what I mean. Like even when the customers are sort of saying they're not interested, he's forced to continue through the script, and that's all he has to do and all he's told to do.
Yeah. It's interesting. First off, the guy he's talking to is the most polite guy in the world, because he basically tells him 3 times, I'm not interested. I mean, after the first one, I'd be like, blip, dead. Yeah. I don't know if people have this kind of patience anymore. But also, obviously, later on we see what happens to the people who work here because of the boss. It's funny you said that it's kind of like a brain dead job. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that they do literally become zombies at one point, so that was interesting.
It's a very good point. I never even put that together, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think also this is sort of put there to sort of almost give you that sort of basically give him sort of like this sort of stress in his life that he's not happy with his life, and sort of make it believable that maybe he is making this up.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just sort of it sets the scene for what's about to come. But he does look miserable, and even like his sort of floor manager is sort of just telling him to smile and not allowed to sort of stop working at all.
Right, I'm going to make the case here. He's the worst. He's the most dislikable character in this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's an actual monster that's preying on people, but he's probably just doing that to survive. This guy is an absolute prick. Everyone knows someone like this, and it's like, oh, what an arsehole.
Yeah, he is the worst. A proper job's worth.
Yeah, I was hoping that this like spider, or this cockroach thing or whatever it was gonna like take this guy down. I was like, oh, get rid of him, man. Hated him.
Well, you talk about that cockroach thing. Gary starts to really struggle on this next call because he keeps seeing this flashing of a light behind like the boss's wall in the office, and he keeps seeing the silhouette of this, what I describe as a cockroach-like creature, some sort of bug with antennas, and he keeps seeing it, and doesn't seem like anyone else can see it, but he's obviously like struggling to sort of keep concentration on the call, and then he ends up sort of telling the customer about what he sees, and that he's the only person that can see it.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think about this effect, because like as we get later on, I think it is kind of effective in like it looks kind of weird and like the way it's sort of done. But initially when I saw it, I was like, I don't know, a big bug just does not seem believable.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm super glad we didn't get a like clear visual of it.
It's interesting you say that, because there's some production notes later on.
Is there? Yeah, I was watching it and I was like, I think that would have taken all sort of like tension away from it if we'd have been able to see like this giant bug. It would have been like James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I think not ever having a clear view and it always being that thing in the corner of your eye, I thought as the episode went through, I thought it was pretty effective, to be honest. I did have those same hesitations at the start, but I thought after watching the entire episode, I did think it was pretty effective, having that sort of just constant there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was too bad. But yeah, by the end, when you see the final effect of it, also, again, with how heavy of a subject this is in the middle, you don't want something that's so like laughably silly, like ruining the point of it, I guess. But yeah, it's it was when it started, and seems to be a theme of like this series. It was a start where I was like, I'm not sure about this episode, and then by the end I was like, it wasn't too bad actually.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think that goes to show how much the team has grown, because in earlier seasons, maybe they would have had this like, crazy idea and not been able to have performed it. Whereas now, whatever crazy idea they throw up at us, even if we've got hesitations at the beginning, it kind of most of the time pays off.
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show how much confidence they have in being able to tackle any subject, really. Back in Washington, Skinner is telling Mulder and Scully, mostly Mulder, that he needs him down in Chicago to do a threat assessment on this company, Vinyl Light. He mentions that there's been a manifesto sent to a radio station, and they chose not to play it, but it's basically inciting violence and a promise to do harm. They don't know how seriously to take it, but they are sending someone down there because an incident has happened involving this company a few years ago, so they want to just double check. Mulder basically, he looks fed up. It's strange. I like this in this episode, to be honest. This was my favourite storyline in the episode, which was Mulder almost feeling like Gary Lambert.
Yeah.
In the sense of he's being asked to do all this crazy stuff, and he's always the guy that they turn to whenever they're after monsters or ghouls or ghosts. Yeah. But then is never believed when he's telling them there's one there. And it's the sort of the burden of the role that he plays in the FBI and how that's weighing on him.
Yeah.
And he just seems fed up. He's like sort of puffing his cheeks out. He thinks this might be a waste of time, that he's just being sent on a goose chase because it's got some semblance of weirdness to it. Mm-hmm. And even to the point where he tells Scully not to bother coming with him. He'll do it himself because there's no point in Scully's time being wasted either. Yeah.
It's interesting. I never thought about the parallel, obviously, of what you're saying, like the boring job that this guy has, or like the not being fulfilled in a job, and Mulder having the same kind of thing. One other thing as well with this scene that I absolutely loved, and again, it plays into what we've been saying before about episodes tying into one another without actually being like connected. So there's a part where I'm almost certain they did it on purpose, where he like rubs his head as though he's pissed off,
and his two fingers are taped together.
Yeah, he's like his fingers are bandaged up, and I was like, oh, that's like, because obviously we saw last episode. It's nice to know that it's still connected to these unconnected episodes, and it's still in the same sort of timeline, I guess.
For sure, definitely. I didn't notice that myself, and that was pretty cool. Mulder heads down there without Scully, meets with this Pincus, who is the boss of this Vinyl Light Corporation, and they listen to the tape, and it's basically this tape, which we know is pretty certain to be Gary Lambert, and he's saying that there's a monster that works at Vinyl Light, and that he's going to expose this monster, and it hides in the light and stalks employees. Basically, it's just like this sort of really creepy, eerily thing. Pincus doesn't believe that there's anything to worry about. He says he knows that he's got to do with the security for insurance purposes, but he thinks it's just some sort of guy making empty threats. And Mulder says, well, do your interviews. If you want to do your own interviews, do it at your own discretion, but I'll look into it. But even in this interview, he's visibly sort of like fed up, and he doesn't think anything's going on here.
Yeah. But he does sort of mention as well, though, that phrase that hiding in the light is important. So that does come up later.
Yeah, he actually even calls Scully about that because he just remembers it coming up in a previous X-File case, and he can't remember where from.
Yeah, I did think it was funny, though, that he's like to Scully, oh, you need to look through the X-Files to do this. And it's like, these days it would be a case of just a word search on some digital file. Yeah. She's got to look through every single X-File. He's like, I don't know, it's one of them.
It made me laugh because one of the X-Files that he pulls up later that sort of he thinks is related to this hiding in the light is the words hiding in plain sight. Now, I'm sorry, but like how many... That's just a normal everyday term. Like, surely that's in almost all X-Files. Like, you can't, like, associate these two things, surely.
Yeah, the amount of creatures we've seen that are, like, invisible or camouflaged or something like that, and it's like, hiding in plain sight is, it's got to be in every one of those cases.
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense. That's literally what they do on stakeouts. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, yeah. We see Pincus start interviewing these people. We're told that it's just to sort of see how everyone is. He's going down the alphabet, and he's just sort of talking to everyone and seeing how they're getting along after what's happened. Mm-hmm. And one of Lambert's colleagues, Nancy, who sits next to him, we've been introduced. Basically, she has one or two lines, but she just seems like the nicest colleague in the world. Someone that's always going to be there and just looking out for you. She gets called into Pincus's office, and Lambert's sort of like freaking out as he sees like these sort of shapes of this bug again. Tries to stop her, can't stop her. She ends up coming out, and in Lambert's eyes is like this sort of grey-skinned, white-eyed, zombie-looking person.
Yeah.
But to the rest of the office, it's just Nancy, and Nancy comes back, sits down, and says, "Yeah, it was fine. It's just a quick meeting. I told you there's nothing to worry about."
At this point, I was convinced that this was all in his head. I mean, I should have known. This is X-Files, so of course it's going to be a monster. But at this point, I was like, oh, this is interesting. They're actually playing off that this guy has got some kind of like disorder or something's like, disturbed this guy to the point where he's seeing these things. And I honestly thought they were going down the path of he's basically, he's not well. It's interesting that is brought up and that's what everyone thinks, but then we get the switch and it's obviously that's not the case. But yeah, I genuinely thought this was going to be the entire plot, and like later on when the hostage thing happened, I thought that was going to be a long drawn out sort of situation. Yeah. But yeah, I should have known.
They do a really good job of this bait and switch in this episode, because they're like all the way through, I'm thinking the same thing as well. I'm thinking that he's the monster of the week rather than there being something else. Yeah,
exactly. I thought it was going to be that, like, but when we ended the one where it was just the serial killer, and it's like, oh, actually, it's, just a person. I genuinely thought we were getting that, but yeah, it fooled me.
Well, especially with Mulder sort of convinced right from the start that he's been giving bogus cases under the pretense of it being an X-File. I mean, so after this scene, we see Lambert in his apartment loading magazines for an assault rifle, an AK-47, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
just on my limited knowledge.
Apparently, technically, it's not.
Okay.
I found I mentioned to you off air that I found a note that somebody when I go through like the production notes, I take everything there, and there was one that was commenting on how the bullets were not correct that he was loading in. And I was like, that is incredibly anal. I was like, I don't think we need to go down that. But yeah, apparently it's not an AK-47, but they say it is, so I mean, it might as well be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So he's getting this gun ready. Mulder gets a call from Scully saying that she's found one of the phrases in a case that he worked on in Florida that involved hidden monsters that only the victim could see, or only the person who I think someone committed a crime and only they could see. Mm-hmm. But basically, this is enough for Mulder to go, you know what, I think you should come down here. I think there is something going on. I'm not quite sure what. And then he ends up going back to Vinyl White to sort of start talking to him, figuring out what's going on. And as he's there, it's an empty office, no one's there, and he sees Nancy on the floor, sort of signaling for him to get out. And as he turns around, he's found himself in a hostage situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the very next scene where it's just Scully arriving, and I just can imagine her just thinking, oh, what has Mulder done now?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, so, like, the police arrive pretty much immediately. I'm guessing in between scenes. I didn't see this myself. Maybe I missed it, but like, it seems like Lambert's already made the demand for like TV cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think they show that, but yeah, I think it's just assumed that obviously what we see later that he wants to get the message out there. So I imagine that's the first thing he's done. As soon as he's got everybody sort of held, he's probably making the call to get heard, essentially.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll run through this scene pretty quickly. Basically, the police are outside, they're staking it out whilst the hostages are being held in this sort of office building. Lambert divides the room up into what he calls monsters and real people. And the monsters are the people that have turned into zombies, as well as Pincus. And then you've got the real people with Mulder there. And we get a really tense scene of, like, Mulder trying to talk him down and trying to sort of make him see sense that there's no monsters in the room. All the while, he's trying to sort of get his gun available to him at the same time so he can sort of de-escalate it himself. However, that is eventually put to ruin, this whole plan that he has, when Scully can't hold the officers outside off any longer, and they end up calling his cell phone to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Which draws attention to the gun to Lambert, and Lambert takes the gun off him.
Yeah, this is where I honestly thought, like, oh, this is going to be the entire episode now. Like, we're going to
just get this. Thought the same,
because it seemed like, oh, he tried to get his gun. Oh no, he can't get his gun. So this will be Mulder trying to talk this guy down, and I thought it was going to be this interesting sort of look into like somebody who's like mentally disturbed and like trying to like see on their wavelength, and like like a normal, like a negotiation kind of a normal. We can't say that, but like a negotiation kind of story in Arene. I just thought it was just going to go down that route, especially with Vince Gilligan as well, because obviously we know he's like writing credentials and stuff. He does a lot of like crime writing as well, I think, doesn't he? So so I thought maybe that's where we're going to get our first look at a hostage situation, I guess, but that's not what happened at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when Lambert finds the gun, one of the so-called monsters, or like the zombies, or whatever you want to call them, one of the group that was originally there, rushes him, and he turns around and opens fire and kills one of the hostages. Obviously, this sets in motion a bit more of a urgency outside to get into the building. So they provide Lambert with these cameras he's after and use the footage of these cameras to find out an entry point in. Now, as they've decided we're coming through the back door. During this part, I know I'm sort of racing through this, but it's a little bit complicated going back and forth.
Yeah.
During this broadcast, Mulder stops Lambert from killing Pincus by walking in front of the gun, and basically says to him that there's nothing wrong. You need to calm down. You can't just kill. You're just going to be killing a man. And as outside SWAT teams cut the lights, Lambert screams at Mulder to look around, and as Mulder does, he sees Pincus in his true cockroach form.
Yeah.
And then the SWAT team come in, and Lambert gets shot dead, but everyone's saved in that building. Yeah.
For how long, we don't know, but ultimately, this is where I was like, oh, okay, this is not what we're getting. Obviously, we get this sort of end to it, but there was a lot of things in this that, like, it was well written in the way that it kept me guessing. So, like, they say, he kept saying, I want a crew to sort of film me, and I want the world to know, and they say, we're going to have to send a crew in. I was like, what? There's no way they would do that. There's no way they'd send a TV crew in to film a guy like who's taking a hostage situation, to then find out, oh no, they're looping it back into the building so nobody's seen it but him. I was like, oh, okay, that's quite a cool idea.
And they're using it to get visuals on what's going on and how to get into the building.
Exactly. I was like, oh, that's quite good, because like straight away I was like, no way, that's not going to happen. But yeah, it actually turned out to be quite a clever sort of plan by the obviously these hostage negotiators know a lot more about.
It's almost as if they know what they're doing.
They're pretty good at this. But there's a few things that there's one bit as well where he's just like firing into the ceiling because like people are on the ceiling. And I was like, Jesus, he's got a lot of bullets there, and like this was after that guy had just rushed him. He just fired into the ceiling. I'm like, he's got to reload. I thought at this point I was like, somebody's going to tackle him or I mean, it's all stuff that I think the writers knew better than us. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think it was an effective scene. And then it almost splits the episode right down the middle, because now we've got this other storyline of Mulder knowing something about that. Like everyone else thinks that it's job done, they've got their man, but Mulder knows something else, and he's starting to believe that Lambert was right all along. Yeah. Obviously, that's where the problematics we talked at the top of the episode comes in, where it's awkward to talk about justifying his actions at all. But in this case, when there's a giant cockroach, I think we can just sort of put that to one side.
It is one of those where it's sort of in the X-Files world that there's always something bigger going on, so you kind of have to look at it like that. But it is a bit.
A little bit awkward to talk about. Also, it makes it a little bit uncomfortable.
Also, you have to kind of think, let's not completely let this guy off the hook. He could have. I said this off air. He could have gone directly to the guy, the monster thing, and just shot him or something like that. Instead, he decided to take an entire room hostage, and it's like,
a load of innocent people, exactly. So like I said, this kind of marks a halfway point to where we've got almost a completely different episode, the second half of the show. Mulder is obviously questioning Pincus in the debrief, and he's questioning him about like the incidents in Kansas City and Florida, and it turns out that he was present, or at least in the area for both of those cases as well.
Yeah.
And then later on in his office, he's like figuring out all these like little different parts of hiding in the light. He's found like a load of references to that in multiple different cases, all along the same lines of this hidden monster. And a lot of them relate to where Pincus has lived or worked or visited or been in. And he's convinced that Pincus is this monster now.
Yeah.
And Scully, he's trying to talk like this to Scully, but Scully is like, she's looking at him and seeing possibly another Lambert. Well, she kind of explains it away by calling it a Folie, which is basically to succumb to someone else's crazy beliefs, basically.
Yeah.
To sort of, if someone else is sort of imagining and seeing things, that if you're in this sort of intense, traumatic situation with them, that it's not unlikely for two people to share the same, I don't know what you'd call it, like...
Delusions, I suppose.
Delusion, yeah. Delusion's a perfect word, actually. Yeah. And those two people might share that delusion because of the traumatic situation they're in. And that's what she thinks might have happened, that Mulder has been in a hostage situation and he's just taken on the delusions of Lambert.
Yeah, it's kind of Stockholm Syndrome to the extreme, innit? So, like,
I suppose so, yeah. It's a similar sort of on the same lines.
Yeah. There's even one part as well, like when we go in the room where he sort of mapped out, as you mentioned, he collected all these like the locations of where it was, and he mapped it out with that kind of like detective red wire where he's connecting all the different things.
Yeah.
And obviously that makes sense because later on when he goes to his apartment, we do actually see that Lambert has the same thing. And again, it's this thing of, well, to everybody else, this is just these two have got this same delusion, whereas we know that they've both come to this same conclusion that there is this monster preying on people.
Yeah. And again, I think they do a good job, even in this second half, of like turning me around in the sense of I started to think, oh, is Mulder just seeing things as well? Is this just Folie? Do you know what I mean? Is this just like his delusion and nothing's actually going on?
Yeah.
So they do a really good job of keeping you guessing throughout. Like you said, Mulder searches Lambert's apartment, sees that he's basically been on the same mission as Mulder's on now. He also, as he's there, sees Nancy watching him, but he now sees Nancy as that corpse. And so he starts chasing him, but all the while, the camera sort of lingers on the Illinois officers that are there with him.
Yeah, yeah.
And their reaction to Mulder and how... I think it's great camera work, because of the way the camera is portrayed, like, Mulder's always sort of off-center. It kind of gives you insight as the audience to sort of say, he is acting strange. Like, he's not the one acting normal in this situation. Yeah,
exactly. So, it adds to that sort of disbelief that maybe this isn't actually happening. Maybe this is... He's seen all this. Yeah, it is well done. And I'd sort of... Because they'd planted the seed there, I didn't believe it as much. But it does make you think, maybe it's not, or it does leave you guessing through a lot of it. We do see the two of them drive away. It's Pincus and what was her name again? Sorry,
Nancy.
I did see another note as well in the production notes where somebody asked, "It's never been explained how a giant bug drove away," which does break the immersion a bit. But you can't think about that for now. He's a human. He's definitely not a bug. Like a human.
Yeah, let's not think about that. How is he typing on his laptop? You know what I mean? How is he typing up all those payslips?
Yeah. I mean, anything like that. If you look too deep, it starts falling apart. So let's just keep it surface value, I guess.
For sure. There's a lovely scene I really enjoyed where, well, actually before that, Skinner is talking to Scully and asking why Mulder's returned to the scene of the crime, why the case is over, why has he gone back? And she's sort of covering for him to an extent, but Skinner's obviously a little bit suspicious. And then she ends up, unwillingly, I may add, performing an autopsy on the Bacchus, the guy who got shot in the hostage situation.
Because he basically got the body sent there without her knowing, didn't he? Which is a bit annoying if I was Scully.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It adds to this sort of craziness that Mulder's going through, and like it all seems a little bit strange. But he manages to convince her by saying that I can't remember what exactly he said, but basically saying you're the 1 in a million or 1 in however many that actually listens and actually believes me. I can't let you can't let me down now because you're the only person that I can talk to.
Yeah. Which
is lovely, but also once again, it's desperate.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mulder's it's just not looking good for Mulder at this point. To the outside world, it does look like he's become a very Lambert-like character.
At the time, I sort of, again, I don't think I was believing into has Mulder gone crazy? So, with this, I was just thinking, I just imagine this was like a shipper's dream, because this is like the first time he's acknowledged that Scully actually means something to him, like she's the only person that truly understands him. And I was like, yeah. Man, they're really leading up to this now. If this doesn't happen in the film, or I don't know when it's going to, or maybe the end of the next episode, who knows? Oh, I don't know.
You never know. As we said, Scully does perform the autopsy. The only real, I mean, it's not even a full autopsy. They just do sort of like a picture autopsy, I think it was, or where they basically take photos and just sort of give a visual exam. And the only thing that comes up really out of the ordinary is that the body, the guy who's helping her assistant, claims that the body's been dead for between 48 to 72 hours. Mm-hmm. And it was only brought in yesterday afternoon. Immediately that kind of sort of piques Scully's interest. But like she does say later, it's notoriously difficult to predict. It's not enough to sort of justify Mulder's claims, but it is enough to sort of have her a little bit of doubt in the back of her mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's it starts like drawing Scully into this, I suppose. And again, it makes it there's more credible evidence, so it feels like, okay, this isn't Mulder's seeing things. This is something bigger is happening here. So it sort of starts leading you down to what you're meant to believe at the end.
Definitely. We go back to Mulder now, who is full crazy mode. He's following Pincus, no authority whatsoever. He's following Pincus to this woman, I'm assuming she works at Vinyl Light, woman's apartment, and he's watching through the window as like this bug stalks her around the house, and then you see this bug go behind her. And again, it's all corner of your eye type of stuff. You never really see a clear picture. And as it does, you hear this woman scream, and Mulder breaks the window.
Yeah.
And he's waving his gun around. It even looks like his actions look erratic. Like I love the fact that to the audience, it's justified, but you can still see how everyone else thinks he's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a real subtle acting, but you can still look at it as a watcher of the X-Files and go, I can definitely see why people would want him locked up. Because he is waving his gun around erratically, do you know what I mean?
It is one of those where, outside looking in, you can definitely understand how all of this... because he kicks the door open as well, doesn't he, and barges in, and it's like... Yeah. I was going to say, that would be crazy if police did that in America. Again, we don't want to get political. But yeah, it's just like, you can understand that in the next scene where they're complaining, that it's like, well, it's completely justified. Obviously, if we had evidence that there was this giant bug attacking her, then fair enough. But at this point, it's like, he's just broken into somebody's house with a gun.
Well, the next scene's interesting as well, because we start to see that it's possible that he's being played as well. He's being manipulated into looking like this. And it looks like this thing, whatever it is, Pincus, has done this many times and knows how to make people look crazy, because him, like you said, him and this woman, I can't remember the woman's name for the life of me, but him and this woman are complaining to Skinner about Mulder's behaviour.
Yeah.
And Skinner's apologetic and saying, I'm sorry, we'll deal with this in the right way. And then Skinner sort of turns to Mulder sort of to berate him a little bit, and Pincus turns into this sort of bug-like thing behind Skinner and sort of starts to prowl him, to which Mulder draws his gun and goes for him right in front of Skinner. Skinner actually has to restrain him and sort of hold him down. Now, that is... and then what I love is it cuts back to Pincus as Pincus, and this sort of ever so subtle smile on his face where it's like, I've got you.
Yeah.
And this is perfect because Skinner has no choice now. Skinner has seen him try and attack an innocent member of the public.
Yeah.
He's got no choice but to deal with Mulder.
Yeah. This is the sci-fi version of, do you know, in like school dramas where like there's a goody two-shoes but is actually an arsehole?
Yes,
This is that where they're like, oh, no, miss, what? And then they're behind the teacher's back and they're like pulling faces and stuff. And you're like, oh, God damn it. They know exactly what they're doing. But in this case, it's a giant bug. Which is
a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a bit more sinister. But yeah, I really like this scene as well because, again, it shows that this thing, it's got a bit of intelligence to it. It knows exactly what it's doing. It knows how to manipulate people to not see it, basically, for what it is. And obviously we know that it's got this ability to camouflage itself as a person through mentally alone, I think, isn't it? Because they've sort of mentioned I think they mentioned like praying mantises hypnotizing its prey, so they're sort of like saying, "Oh, is this some kind of like psychological thing that it does?" But obviously, it's clever enough to do that. It must be clever enough to play people off against one another, and it's really effective. And also, like the actor, the guy who plays the bug, Pincus. He's quite good at just being like sly, the smirk and everything that he does. It's like, oh, you prick, you know what you're doing.
yeah, exactly. So Mulder is basically in the process of getting carted away. He ends up in this sort of restrained in this hospital. He does manage to get a message to Scully, asking Scully to check the back of the victims' heads for puncture marks, because that's where we saw the woman getting attacked.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it could prove his innocence, but basically begging her to please look for evidence. You've got to save me. You're the only one who can help. But yeah, Mulder gets carted away and he's tied down to his bed, and there's like this nurse there that sort of must be, again, at first sight, she doesn't seem to be helpful at all, but then she must deal with this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And then Mulder starts seeing this bug creature outside his window, and he starts panicking and calling for help, and the nurse comes in, ominously looks at him and opens the window, and we know, oh, okay, this nurse is in on it too.
Yeah, she's been got to. Does it cut back to Scully finding the 3 dots on the neck at this point as well in the autopsy?
Yeah, so all the while as this is going on, Scully finds the puncture marks and rushes to the hospital to sort of save Mulder, to get him out of there.
I'd like the bit where she finds this, because she just she finds it by basically she flips the guy over, shaves the bit out of his head, and then just sees the dots. But I did think, man, imagine you were going to your dad's funeral, and then he's like, who gave him a haircut before?
This scene, I mean, I decided not to mention this because I don't know the ins and outs of autopsies.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like the way she shoved him over, and then just you know what really bothered me more than anything else? It was the shaving the head and then just blowing the hair across the lab or whatever it's called.
I saw somebody state that if this was a crime scene and they were collecting DNA, that would ruin it.
Yeah, I just thought, what? It just doesn't seem right, but I honestly don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I thought I'm not going to mention
the
it.
head shave did make me laugh, though, because I just kept thinking of, do you know Jackass, where they just shave bits of the back of people's heads?
Yeah,
everyone's going to think they've done that to him. I'm like, oh, this poor guy, he's going to look a right idiot on his big day.
On his big day. So, well, yeah, but it's all for good cause because she does find those puncture marks.
Yeah.
And like you said, she rushed to the hospital. And the nurse is being very sort of stubborn, won't let her see Mulder. It's hospital policy. But for a brief second, Scully looks at this nurse and sees the corpse version of the nurse. Mm-hmm. And she knows, okay, I've got to go in and help. And she rushes in, sees Mulder struggling, and Scully actually sees the cockroach creature as well. I keep calling it cockroach. I don't know whether it's cockroach. But,
I'm not sure, yeah.
The bug creature anyway. And she takes a few shots at it, and this cockroach falls out the window and disappears. whilst there's Mulder, and she's saved Mulder once again.
Yeah. And the thing gets away in typical X-Files fashion. Again, we must have said this being an anniversary episode. We must have said this quite early on. How many cases just seem to just they crack it, but they don't catch the culprit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many dangerous monsters and people out there that they never get. They're always like, oh, it got away, but at least we know who he was. It's like, say that to the next batch of victims.
Which we actually see in this episode. Do you know what I mean? We actually see it's not like it's hidden.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we get to the final scene, and Skinner's pressing Scully and basically saying, what happened? Why have you suddenly changed your mind? And she testifies that that Mulder is mentally sound and fit for duty. She believes that there was an intruder in Mulder's room, and there was chemicals found in Bacchus's body. She confirms all of this, and she does mention as well that Pincus and the other people that Mulder implicated have all disappeared and left town.
Yeah,
so that they're unable to be found. So she believes that all this confirms Mulder's case. But then, when pressed by Skinner as to what the actual thing was that was in the room, she refuses to answer, and she says she doesn't know, it was dark. And even when he says, oh, you must have seen something, she refuses to answer.
Yeah.
When she's talking to Mulder later, Mulder says, well, what did you tell him? And she said, it was Folie it was... But I do like this, because it kind of sets up, what the X-Files is, as well as what this case was. Yeah. She believes that she saw what Mulder saw in her sort of manic state, that he was telling the truth, but, he was embellishing it, and that's what she saw as well. But also, as the elevator closed, she succinctly describes Folie as a madness shared by two, which I loved, because it basically just it just sums up the X-Files. Do you know what I mean? Especially with the elevator closing on both of them, and it's she's been Mulder's feeling sort of trapped by constantly being the go-to guy when all these creepy ghouls and weird phenomenons happen. And Scully's dragged into that by sort of being associated to Mulder, and then it just happened. I love that idea. A madness shared by two, I thought was such a beautiful line.
It's, I mean, I didn't put the association together, but it could be that is just summing up their entire history together pretty much at this point. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't even notice that. It's just,
it's brilliant. What the world Mulder's got Scully into is great. But then we get the last little epilogue, which is the exact same thing. A telemarketing guy in this sort of office-like building, and he sees the same things as we saw in the beginning of the episode and starts to freak out while he's on the phone. Yeah. So we know this is all happening once again.
Yeah. Although we won't see it this time, just these poor innocent people will die namelessly.
Yeah, sadly so, yeah. What did you think of this episode, Luke?
Pleasantly surprised. With the opening scene, I thought it was going to be a bit silly. Then, we got to the middle, and I was like, oh, this is actually just going to be this big metaphor, I guess, for somebody who's mentally disturbed, and I thought it was going to be something like that. For it to switch back to this actual monster story, and it to not seem silly, I have to give them a lot of credit for, because halfway through I was like, I really hope this is not a monster, and then by the end they got me going, it actually worked being a monster in the end. So much better than I actually expected. I quite liked it by the end. It was a lot of surprises throughout, so I really can't fault it too much. It was effective in everything it did. Obviously it had its I think the effect of the bug was decent by the end, but watching it back and talking about it is a bit silly, you know what I mean? The actual makeup and everything, I guess. But the effects done to it did sort of take away from that sort of jarring part, I suppose. Yeah.
Like I said, I enjoyed this episode for what it was. I thought it was masterfully done the way they kept you guessing throughout. So from a logistical standpoint, I thought it was very well done. And I actually thought, like much like you, I was very skeptical right at the start. But I thought the way they just never showed it and they never sort of give you a clear image. And even when they did, there was like moments where it was there, like behind Skinner, for example, and you could see it. It was full in frame on your TV screen. But like, it had a jarring effect, do you know what I mean, in the actual sort of, on the screen. And it just gave this sort of like otherworldly, like, maybe this isn't what it actually looks like. Maybe this is just sort of, I don't know, like a glitch almost.
Yeah, like your brain's coming up, like your brain's coming up with a picture for it or something. Yeah.
Spot on, exactly, yeah. Or it's at least making up some part of it.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I thought this was a really decent episode, yeah. I enjoyed it.
Luke's production notes.
Folie Deux was inspired by the idea that there's a monster around that only you can see, the clinical definition of madness. This is a quote from Vince Gilligan. The title is a reference to Folie Deux, which, as we mentioned, is French for madness of two, a psychiatric syndrome in which symptoms of a delusional belief and sometimes hallucinations are transmitted from one individual to another, which is essentially what we saw. So it is an actual real thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'd like to read up more about that, to be honest.
Yeah. There's so many stuff like that. Like, as we mentioned, with Stockholm Syndrome as well. You just think, outside of it, you think, how does that even happen? But, like, if you're in the situation, it's hard to say how you'd react.
It's hard to imagine how you'd feel, isn't it?
Exactly. The episode's bug antagonist was actually a prosthetic suit worn by a stunt woman. The suit was highly ridiculed behind the scenes. Reportedly, actor Markinson, who played the gunman, I can't remember the guy's name.
What's his name now? Lambert.
Lambert, that's it, yeah. Upon seeing the costume, said, "This is what's driving me crazy."
I mean, to be fair though, it would. Like, if as silly, it doesn't have to be like. It could be the silliest 6-foot cockroach in the world. It would drive me crazy if I saw it. Wouldn't be my boss.
It'd be like Donnie Darko, I suppose. You'd just be like,
exactly,
what's going on
it's
here?
still going to drive you mad.
Yeah. Director Kim Manners, too, thought the costume was ridiculous and sardonically told people that the episode would ruin his career. Gilligan attributed the problem due to the episodic work schedule. He noted, "We're usually on such a short schedule that there has to be a weak link somewhere." Gilligan also stated that the over-engineered aspects of the suit made it somewhat comical. Yeah. So the suit as it was, people weren't sold on it.
Makes you wonder, like, it's one of those chicken and the egg situations, isn't it? As to, like, do you reckon the effects was always going to be there, or do you reckon they were brought in because the suit looked strange?
It's funny you should say that.
Oh, am I preempting production notes?
Preempting production notes, yeah. To fix the perceived issues of the monster, the production team gave the film footage to visual effects editor Laurie Carlson-George, who took the footage with the monster in it, erased the monster completely, took the monster to a different screen, animated it and added a speed blur. The effects were time-consuming and were only finished the day the episode aired.
Wow. I've got to say, Laurie, a round of applause. Yeah. I thought they did a fantastic job.
I think he single-handedly saved the episode, because imagine this was just a giant bug. It would look ridiculous. If you're not going for comedy, this would have looked terrible. Absolutely terrible. So yeah, I feel like, Laurie has to have a round of applause for that.
Absolutely.
In the finished episode, the monster is not clearly visible, which allowed the scariness of the episode to be more real. Gilligan approved of Carlson-George's work, saying, "There's a long notable history to obscuring the monster. The truth is, your imagination can be much more effective than real life." So, there we go. Gilligan approved of it as well. Apparently, it's one of Vince Gilligan's favourite episodes.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's weird because there's nothing really in this episode that stands out to me. But I enjoyed it as a whole quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's
effective, I'd say, by the end. Yeah, as a complete thing. So, Initially, the producers wanted to set the Gretchen Starnes, who that's the woman who is sort of being attacked in her house.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gretchen does actually ring a bell now, yeah.
The producer wants to set the Gretchen Starnes house scenes at a tract home to recall the pastoral community featured in movies like Edward Scissorhands and The Truman Show. However, when the production crew located a suitable tract home, it was not nearly as spooky as they were hoping, and so they ended up shooting most of the scenes in a turn-of-the-century house located in North Vancouver, British Columbia.
Interesting.
So yeah, that scene. To be fair, that scene was quite creepy because she was like sat in the dark watching a black and white film, which is horror film 101.
Yeah, it's all the tropes.
Yeah. Special effects rigging was installed on the house to allow the bug creature to scale the wall. The elaborate sequence in which the insect creature crawled across the ceiling was made by erecting an upside-down house set on a soundstage. The stunt woman portraying the bug then crawled across the set, and the footage was flipped in post-production. So, a lot more detail to that like little brief scene than you can...
Yeah.
Like, because it's literally about 2 seconds of screen where we just see Mulder sort of looking up at it, I suppose, isn't it? So
I think it was an important scene to sort of show how otherworldly this thing is. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. How unnatural it is.
Yeah.
And not just a humanoid bug.
Yeah, that just walks around, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, the scene featuring an armoured car smashing through the wall. Vinyl Right was also filmed on a specifically constructed soundstage, which that was quite an interesting action scene as well, because they literally do just smash through a wall and guns blazing start shooting at people. So it's definitely more action packed than the run of the mill X-Files episode, I suppose.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic Files.
I think this week I'm going to give it... I think I'm going to give it a 7.5.
7.5.
Kind of down the middle, but definitely on the good side.
Yeah. Like in the middle of a good score. You know,
exactly, yeah.
I gave it an 8, which a bit higher, but there's sometimes where I'm like, I'll just give it solid numbers.
Yeah.
And I thought, an 8's about fair, I'd say, for this. Like, it is a good episode. It's not like the best episode, but it is a good episode, I thought. Like, by the end of it, I was quite entertained by it. The rest of the internet, with 3,041 votes, gave it an 8.7. So this is quite highly regarded.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have expected it to be that high, but I can definitely see why.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see, like, when we've sort of watched a few more, like, to sort of see what the rankings were of IMDb of, like, what's the most, like, or what, like, a list of, like, the top rated episodes are. Maybe to sort of, like, line up to see what we thought. I know ours will be wildly different, because I don't think stuff like Humbug is, like, up there and, like, highly rated ones. But it is interesting to sort of compare what we thought anyway.
I'm very much looking forward to our post-season chats.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking forward to seeing how different we vary now. Like, we went through a phase of having very similar lists.
Yeah.
And I don't think our top 5s are going to be anywhere near the same anymore.
It'd be interesting to see how many duplicates we have across them. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. Do we have any tweets this week?
Welcome to Dan's Twitter Corner.
We had a really, really fun tweet from Jen Shep.
I saw this on. I loved it.
This I couldn't stop laughing. So she put, "You might appreciate this post from a former X-Files props guy. I recall you being big fans of the legendary Jersey Devil sketch." Now, I'll just describe this post for our listeners. It's brilliant. It's basically a post of this prop guy that just, they wanted this bad drawing of the Jersey Devil, which we've talked about in depth. He thought he wasn't that great an artist, so he just mocked something up and they ended up using it in the show. And this one little bit of drawing, people have got tattooed on themselves around the world. These tattoos look fantastic. I am very tempted, Luke.
Oh, man. Imagine if that was your first tattoo. Like, what do I want?
I haven't got a tattoo yet. It could be my first
Imagine
tattoo.
taking it to the tattoo artist. What do you want then? Do you want, like, I always just imagine first tattoos, what you're going to get. Like, you look for a book, you go, no, I want this. Like, did you draw that yourself? Or
It's so good. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that with us. Honestly, any stories like that, feel free to send them to us, because I love behind-the-scenes stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
At Ray Noel got in touch and said, thanks, guys. Fun discussion with the episode on the All Souls. She loved the comment about Mulder's porn habits. It's canon by this time, but I don't think it's an addiction. Yet he does still enjoy the other activities. He plays basketball and swims. We definitely know he swims.
Yeah. We've got.
Actually, we have seen him play basketball as well, haven't we?
Didn't he?
He's got hobbies. He's fine.
Didn't he like shoot a half pointer, like one shot or something like that?
I don't have a clue about basketball, so I wouldn't even know what a half pointer is.
Not a half pointer, or a half quarter. Sorry, do you know where it's like from the half court you shoot a shot and it like goes in?
You're gonna have to be the residential basketball expert. If
don't
Luke's
say
got
that.
anything wrong here, guys, any basketball fans out there, message Luke, say loser. Just call him a loser, because call him a basketball loser.
Basketball loser, yeah. I mean,
He's
to be honest,
to know what basketball is, and he has no clue.
I mean, to be fair, I'm 5'3". I don't know if basketball is the sport for me.
I'll just do a few more. Kathy got in touch, said, she was the person that gave us that theory last week about the Pine Bluff variant. You guessed my theory. Hope it didn't spoil the episode. I'd hate to do that to this episode. But I think the new Spartans were vetting Mulder, seeing how well he would follow directions, and setting up a meeting at a Triple X theatre. Not that it was abandoned, but just seeing how far he's willing to go, which that makes complete sense. I like that. And I'd happily say that's canon for me, because he was obviously stressed when Scully called. Yeah,
he didn't want to talk at all, did he? So yeah, I mean, I don't think it ruins the episode at all. I feel like it actually adds to the sort of what we've been saying about the episodes sort of leading into one another, like in some small way. So I feel like that's a good theory on the episodes.
Definitely, for sure. I'm down. That's canon. I'm going to put it right down there now. That's canon for
I
me.
wonder if like any of the producers of the show have mentioned it, or if they've been asked at like because like obviously there's X-Files conventions, or like people would have been to like other comic conventions. I wonder if it's ever been sort of brought to them.
I'm not sure. Let's have a look. See, this is when we can start actually researching X-Files. Maybe in like 3 years' time.
Yeah, if we ever meet Chris Carter, we'll ask him.
Last one. Resident enemy of the show, Green Elf Oz. Hey, Most Unwanted Pod, guys. I'd rather hear your thoughts on Team Markle than your opinion on Mulder's marriage, Angry Face. So, this has convinced me I think we should do a full episode on Mulder's previous marriage, which we know is canon.
Wow.
We've got...
The views of Daniel Checkley do not represent the views of Most Unwanted.
I didn't start this. I'm going to put it out there right now, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to agree with me. I think Mulder has been married 4 or 5 times. I think there's been a lot of wives over the years.
Very unfaithful.
No, we do have some funny back and forth over Twitter with regards to Mulder's marriage and the canon of it, and whether that's real or not. I love the fact that it's a big deal. I really do. I love the fact that it could have just been someone just playing a prank. I love it. I think that's so great that it's caused this discussion around it.
I'm pretty sure David Duchovny did just do it as a laugh, like just to wind people up, and now it's now 30 years later.
So, Luke, I think it's a character decision, and I think if David Duchovny believes that he was married. You can't deny that. Sadly, that's just the case in point. It's on screen. It's recorded. It's there.
Well, there we go. We've got
and
that.
You agree with me, so thank you very much to everyone for joining.
My silence is complicit. I don't like being dragged into this war.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We are back next week with the finale of season 5. Yeah. That has come around so quick.
I can't believe that we're already at this point, to be honest.
It's insane. And then we've got the film straight after, which I believe we're going to do this season, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. I think it might be worth us doing it as a continuation of like the series, basically. So the week after would be
for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll be bringing that one out before the post-season stuff.
Do you know what next week's episode is called?
I certainly do. It's nice and easy to remember. It's called The End.
Yeah, I thought it was called The End, which, I mean, there we go. We have no more episodes after that, so I'm fairly good that we got to that point.
Do you think in the end Mulder will be reunited with his old wife and then they get married again?
Well, who knows? Google has
That's the dream. That's what we're all waiting for.
Google has quickly spoiled that this is not the end, as the next episode is called The Beginning. So Google. I mean, I kind of had a feeling that there might be a season 6 after season 5. But it's nice to live in like hope that there's these surprises out there.
Yeah, I don't like. I'm gonna take the show's word. I'm gonna say this is the end. We've got 2 episodes left. Luke.
Imagine if we did just go, well, that's the end of the show, and we're not gonna watch any more.
Yeah, we just didn't look at the internet. We didn't know.
Oh,
this is the end. It must be.
Yeah, it's called The End. There's no way.
Oh. But yeah, thank you very much for joining in. You can. As always, you can get in touch with us on pretty much all social media. Most Unwanted Podcast. If you just search for it, you'll find us. We will see you next week for the last episode of season 5, the season finale. Look forward to speaking to you then. Chex hates Australia, love, and Yorkshire.
It's a weird list. It's got to be said.